All right, welcome in. Welcome in. While we're waiting to get started, we're going to get started in about a minute. Please enter your PIT username into the chat. That helps us keep track of number one, who's attending, but also number two, it helps us keep track of which program you attended so we can share recordings and additional information with you guys. All right, so we're going to get started. Hopefully, some more friends will join us along the way. But I want to introduce myself. My name is Gabby Gartner. I am an internship associate in the Career Center, and I'll be leading you through the professional wellness section of the adult program. I use she, her, and hers pronouns, and just like you, I was a Pitt student. I graduated in 2018 with my Bachelor's of Arts in Communication and Rhetoric. And the reason I tell you guys that is I wanted you to know I've been in your shoes. I've been where you have been, where you are right now, relatively recently. Gone through this whole kind of job process, especially thinking about how long it can take or what that first day can really look like for you. But so first I want to introduce Nazreen Haroon. She is a member of the Young Alumni Advisory Council, and she'll be talking to you a little bit about joining the membership. So Nazreen, take it away.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am Nazreen Haroon. I graduated from Pitt in 2016, and I serve as one of the recruitment chairs for the Young Alumni Council. So just a little bit of background on our organization. Anyone who graduates from Pitt in the past 10 years is automatically considered a member of the Young Alumni Network. And so there's a leadership organization for the Young Alumni Network that's called the Young Alumni Council, which is about 25 Pitt alum, all graduated from Pitt in the past 10 years, who dedicate their time to making sure that the young alumni experience is as best as it can be. The way that we do this is kind of threefold. So we do events such as what we're doing tonight, whether it be with students or focused on alumni programming, obviously. We also serve as liaisons to different areas of the university to make sure that the young alumni perspective and voices is involved in different plans that the university is making, and also just making sure that we can get alum involved with the university and keep those connections even when you're technically off campus or whatever it might be. And then we also just strive to make sure that every alum, regardless of where they end up after Pitt, knows how to stay engaged and involved with Pitt. So whether it's attending our events or being behind the scenes and being kind of on the leadership that helps put them on, there's lots of different ways to remain involved. So that's what kind of the goals of the Young Alumni Council are. So we are currently seeking our next cohort of volunteers to join our group. So applications are currently open, and they'll be open until May 28th. We have a few info sessions coming up, one next week and then one in May, so that you can learn more and just kind of chat with us in a casual setting to get to know more about our experience and what we do in the group. But I will put all of the links and contact information in the chat. So if you're interested in applying, we're happy to have a conversation and happy to walk through any questions you might have with the application. But it's definitely a great way to kind of get a jump start into remaining connected to Pitt after graduating. Thank you.
Of course. Well, thank you guys for coming to this event. And this section precedes the Young Alumni panel at the end. So make sure you stick around, ask a lot of questions. We've had really great participation the first 2 days. We're hoping to make it 3 out of 3 with great audience participation. So let's get started. We're going to talk about a couple different things in this workshop. And you don't have to have your first job to take this workshop. You don't have to have it yet. I know personally it took me 6 months after graduation to find my first full-time, my real job. But whenever your first job starts, I want to, number one, congratulate you, because your hard work and determination has paid off, right? This real job may start tomorrow, may start next month or next year, depending on so many factors. But at some point, you're going to have your first day of work, right? Your first day of your real adult job. So, obviously, going into any new situation, we can feel really nervous and really uncomfortable, right? So I want to talk to you about, how to limit those new job nerves, and obviously acknowledging that you're having them is a big part of it. I tell students all the time, you're always going to be nervous for a job interview. It's one of those things. It's just a situation where you're going into a situation that you don't really know what's going to happen. So you're always going to be nervous. But some ways you can limit those nerves are reminding yourself what you'll be doing, either reviewing the job description, a position description, or a part of your job offer if it's there. Remind yourself why you wanted this job. What about the company do you love? What about this position? What is it going to give you the capability to do and the capability to learn? Right? Sometimes when I get really out of my head, I'll be like, wait, why did I want this job? Oh, yes, I know I wanted to work with students. I know I wanted to do this. Right? Another thing is don't expect to know everything day one. Make sure you're constantly asking questions. Make sure you are thinking about things, outside of, what you'll be doing, making connections with other people around you, making sure that you're doing the right things. And we'll talk a little bit about that in specific in a little bit. Be accountable early on. Obviously, if you make a mistake, that can really, it might not even be a major mistake, but it can snowball into something larger if you don't take accountability for those things. And obviously, being nervous, you can be more likely to make a mistake. But the more you own up to it, the more comfortable you'll start feeling and saying, okay, now I know that if I make a mistake and I let my supervisor know, this will happen. Okay, now I'm feeling more comfortable in this situation. Obviously, pay attention to the rules, even if it seems like no one else is. And I'll give you a quick side story. When I first started in the Career Center, my supervisor told me no cell phones in staff meetings. This is back in the day when we could have in-person staff meetings. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Left my phone in my office for my first staff meeting. I go sit down. There's like 5 or 8 people that are just sitting there, scrolling on Instagram. And I'm like, oh, wait, why didn't they tell me not to bring my phone? And I was like, okay, well, obviously, I don't want to be, pegged as a lazy Gen Z who sits on her phone all the time. But obviously, it was something that I needed to kind of earn in the sense, but obviously it was something that I wanted to make a really good impression. And my supervisor wanted me to make a really good impression. So obviously it's really important to pay attention to those rules, even if it seems like no one else is. And there may be other reasons why those staff members were able to have those. Maybe they have a child that was sick or something like that. Take notes. This is something I know I do it all the time. I have my handy dandy notebook right here. I've had 2 full notebooks since I started this job a couple years ago. To always take notes, always be keeping track of what you're doing, because number one, it can help you feel more comfortable that you can reference back to something, but also it can give you a reference point. So if you say a couple years down the line, you're ready to look for a new job, you can peer back at your notebook and say, okay, I remember I worked on this type of project, and then I worked on these types of projects. It can really help you figure out, what you really did in your time there, right? But the last thing I would tell you, when limiting those new job nerves is remember that you won't be new forever, right? I know when I started in the Career Center, someone started like 2 weeks after me, and then someone started like a month after them. So I know in my job that there's a lot of new people coming in, and there probably are in a lot of companies, right? And being the new person, it's like being the new kid at school. You're trying to figure out where you fit in, trying to figure out what the dynamics are, but then someone else new comes in, and then you feel more comfortable. And you're like, okay, I can help out that person. So just remember that, you may be new now, but you're eventually going to be a seasoned vet. All right. So thinking about the who, the what, the where, the when, all the things you need to know before day one of starting your new job. And obviously some of these things are important in the post-pandemic world. Some of these are important now where we are, but obviously what you need to know first and foremost is, do you have to go to work or do you have to log on to work, right? Those are kind of the first 2 things you have to figure out. But obviously also figuring out whom you report to, where the office is physically and how you're going to get there if you have to go to a physical office. If you don't, when you need to log on, do you need to be on at a specific time, or do you really just kind of work independently? What you need to bring with you if you're going to the office, lunch, notebook, those types of things. And then what to wear, making sure that the outfit is cleaned and pressed if necessary. So it's like the who, what, where, when of day one. And I know that for me, another thing about limiting job nerves is if I have a plan and I say, okay, I know it'll take me 40 minutes and 2 buses to get to Oakland. I need to make sure I'm on the road at this point and going here and making sure I have everything. That actually helps me because I can kind of check off the box and say, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. But talking about what to wear, thinking about that, have you thought about what you're going to wear? Have you thought about, what do I wear in a Zoom call, right? Obviously, dress codes vary from company to company, sometimes from season to season. And obviously, I know we're probably all in that stage of like, I have nothing to wear. Nothing fits anymore. Nothing's, my style. And that's definitely something to kind of think about moving forward, obviously, whether or not you work virtually or in person. So now we got this fancy term, Zoom casual, right? Zoom casual is something that what's really important is obviously chest up, right? So for men, that could be a collared shirt minus the jacket and tie. You can add a sweater in the winter, a polo shirt, cardigan, or a lightweight jacket, something that just looks clean and presentable, right? For women, that can be blouses or sweaters, simple colors, staying away from patterns like houndstooth pattern or something that can be like disturbed by the camera wavelength. Your hair and makeup can remain clean and simple. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not wearing makeup today. The pandemic has been great for my skin. It's been recovering from all the makeup I put it through. But definitely, something that you feel portrays your best self, and make sure that, your lighting can play effects. So look at me now. If I turn off this extra light I have, I probably look a little like a gremlin now. So thinking about how your lighting plays into fact. Obviously, I know Erin and I were talking right before this program. She was like, which polo are you wearing? And obviously we have, this is the new color. I also have one that's old colors. And I was like, oh, the lighting, because it's so dark out, well, relatively dark out right now. It's like, oh, it's probably playing with that lighting in my room and playing with how I look on the screen. So maybe I should have worn something that was even brighter, right? So thinking about, obviously, this is your above the keyboard outfit. And I know they talked actually about this a little bit in yesterday's panel is one of the ways that people feel really like they go to work still is they go up and they get dressed for work, right? They don't just roll out in their sweatpants and do their thing. But definitely, you can have some work sweatpants. You can have some professional, you're like yoga pants you're ready to wear. But definitely something on the bottom that you're comfortable in. So obviously you can be sitting for a long amount of time, making sure that's something that, it's not too like suctiony on your stomach. It's not something that's too restrictive, something that's really comfortable for you to sit for long periods of time. And if that's what you'll be doing, working from home. All right, a couple quick things I want to touch on: the difference between business casual and smart casual. Business casual is really what you're thinking about, typical, what you wear to the office, maybe some types of things like a high school teacher would wear. You know what I mean? Thinking about nice khakis paired with a polo shirt or a collared shirt, right? For women, it's dress pants, khakis with some sort of fashionable top. Thinking about, it's really kind of casual, but obviously not like t-shirt and jeans. You know what I mean? Whereas smart casual, it just takes it up a notch. So this is when you add a sport coat. This is when you add like a blazer or a nice kind of jacket. Thinking about dark jeans, dark pants. It's like dressy casual. And sometimes students are like, how do I know what I'm supposed to wear? Always err on the side of conservative. If you're really not sure, what to wear to a certain office, always go more conservative the first couple of days until you can get there and figure out what other people are wearing. Scout it out and say, oh, okay, it seems like the people on my team wear a lot of denim. They wear jeans and they wear really nice shirts and sport coats. It's like, okay, maybe I should look into that, right? Give yourself a situation and give yourself some time to kind of adapt and figure out, okay, is this because this is summer? I know in student affairs, our summer policies are more relaxed than our academic year policies. So thinking about those types of things can be really helpful. But obviously, fashion comes in and out. Definitely take your time with it and try figuring it out, on your own. And if all else fails, ask your supervisor and say, what do people really wear here for certain events? Or what do people wear in when they go to certain types of meetings? If you're working outside of an office, obviously if you're working in research, thinking about closed-toed shoes, you're working in a lab, you want your hair pulled back, pants or skirt that covers your legs to the ankle. If you're working a part-time job, dress depending on your industry. Obviously working at American Eagle is totally different than working at McDonald's. So dress based on your industry. But overall, and this is something that our supervisor, our director Cheryl says a lot, dress for your day, right? If you have a meeting with someone that's really important and you need to take that meeting seriously, you need to elevate your look, right? But if I've only got like one meeting with a student today and I have, a couple other small things, you can dress your day down, right? But dress for your day, and whatever your day is going to look totally different than the other people you work with what their day looks like. So thinking about your responsibilities should help indicate, what you should wear. But obviously, ask your supervisor, take a look, scope it out and see what's out there. Thinking what to wear is one of those things that I feel like everyone's like, it should be really easy, but sometimes it's not. So this is what I kind of referenced earlier. What types of questions you should ask on day one. And if you're going to take a screenshot of anything, this is what I would take a screenshot of, because you don't have to ask all of these questions, but these are the types of things you should be thinking about, right? Number one, how do I log my hours, or how do I call off? How do I take sick time, right? What are the procedures around that? If you'll be working in an office, do you need keys or a key card to access anything, whether that's a closet or, again, in the union, we need access to the elevators. Will you have a unique email or calendar account? How can you access it? Can you have it on your phone? Yes or no? Will anything be expected of me outside of work hours? And this is something I know being virtual has kind of changed for a lot of people. But if someone emails you at 8 o'clock p.m., are you expected to answer that email? Yes or no? And that's something good for you to know ahead of time so you don't miss out on something, or so that you don't set the precedent of, oh, I'll respond to anything at any time. Can you use headphones / your cell phone in the workplace? That's a good thing to know, just what the policies are. Who will I be working with directly? So who do you either directly report to, or who is on your team that you can contact, right? And then obviously, who's in charge and what is the chain of command? Obviously, your direct supervisor is probably not going to be the CEO before the company. So thinking about the chain of command can really help you figure out where you stand in a lot of different things. Think about obviously like a power structure, where you are and whom you report to and who that person reports to. All right, but like I said, these are the types of things you should think about. Obviously, some of them are very, simple and really tailored to you, but also some of the things, some are kind of more large scale, kind of more conceptual things to think about. All right, so I love this tweet. We're going to talk a little about email etiquette here. So this tweet says, me writing an email. I'm using an exclamation point, so I'm friendly and excited. But now I'm using a period, so I'm not crazy. Here's another sentence with a period as a buffer, proving my normalness. Thanks so much. I know I can be an overly excited person in emails, which is, I'm not always that excited. But yeah, an exclamation point, it changes the attitude. But you'd be surprised how many emails we receive on a daily basis from all different types of people that aren't well constructed. And obviously, working in a virtual world, email is critical for most, if not all, organizations. So making sure you know how to send a good email is going to be really, really valuable in the long run. It's going to save you some stress. It's going to save you some correspondence, especially, like I said, in this virtual world where I can't walk across the hallway to Aaron's office and say, hey, Aaron, can we talk about this? I kind of have to get all that information out in the email. So this is a fake bad email. Let me say that it is fake, but we'll kind of run through it. So thinking about this email I got from Kyle, Kyle needs his resume reviewed. Can you do it as soon as possible? I need it to apply for a job today and tomorrow. Thanks. Right, so what's bad here? Obviously, number one, vague email subject line, just resume. Too many exclamation points, not enough content, poor grammar and spelling. No closing signature, he just signed it, Kyle. And he forgot to attach his resume. I can't read your resume if you don't attach it. So obviously, there's so many different ways that Kyle could have done a little bit better. So just think about, when you send an email, think about make sure you're hitting those things. You want to have a detailed subject line, as we'll talk about here. So this is an email I sent to my staff back in November, thinking about email distributions for a newsletter I was creating. So obviously, we're looking at an informative, distinct email subject line. Email distributions on that date. Clear content. So I said, this is what I have going out in this newsletter that will be happening on this specific day. Laid it out clear as possible. I gave a timeline for responses. Please reply back with updates by Tuesday, November 19th at noon. Clear timeline for response. And then I have my signature with my contact information. Obviously, they have my email address because they received my email, but if they want to call me, if they want to talk to me, that's how they can find me. So taking an email that's kind of plain and vague and doesn't even have an attachment to something that really, if someone were to read that and say, okay, I know what this email is about, I know whether or not this is relevant to me. Okay. So always think about it. I know, sometimes people painstakingly work over email. I know to this day, still when I email students, I always make sure I'm like, okay, am I doing all the things that I should be doing here? It's one of those things, just take the extra step and it will save you so much in the long run. All right. So there's a lot of different types of relationships in the workplace. And actually, if you went to the social wellness workshop last night, Erin did talk a little bit about this, but obviously there's so many different types of people, right? And obviously thinking of friends by vicinity, friends that you went to school with, friends that you were on a team with, right? Naturally, you're going to find people in that group that you like and people that you don't like, right? But you still have to work together to do that common goal, whether that is to work on a project, to win a game, right? So obviously you have your coworkers. That's kind of a general overarching term. A team member is someone you work directly with. Work friends can be team members or coworkers, but they're just people that you're like, I would go to happy hour with you. Manager, supervisor, this is a person whom you report to who probably has some sort of power. You may have a mentor, you may be a mentee, whether or not that person is your supervisor or not. And then obviously life friends. These are, people that you go on a vacation with, that you hang out with in your free time, right? Obviously these categories can overlap, but it's important to know where you stand. You don't want to, you can be friends with your supervisor, but you don't want to, go on a tangent about how everything is terrible to your supervisor. That's not going to look good on. So thinking about a lot of different things, and obviously, it happens, and definitely, you may say the wrong thing once or twice, but making sure that you don't make a habit of it, I think, is the most important part. But like I said, thinking about this friends by vicinity, you're with these people, you're going to be friends with people, you're not going to like other people. It's life, right? So just make sure that you know the types of people that you work with and reaching out to other people that are around you for, whatever they offer you, whether that's a mentor-mentee relationship or just a friendship in general, or just, we did a March Madness bracket and that person beat me, and I'm never going to forget that person beat me in March Madness bracket. That person is not here, but they know who they are. So thinking about supervisors, right? What kind of supervisor do you have? Supervisors come in all different roles, but the relationship you will have will depend on multiple factors, including how many people they supervise, their preferred method of supervising, their everyday roles and responsibilities, and of course, your industry, right? Meeting with a research supervisor or a PI is totally different than your corporate business supervisor. I know myself presently, I meet with my supervisor twice a week, once in a one-on-one and once in a team meeting. I know some people that meet with their supervisor once every 6 months, for their appraisal, and that may be it. And obviously that person may have more of a digital relationship where they correspond more over email rather than meeting, right? And definitely this is something to go into. You can't predict that type of thing, but if you get in that situation, you're like, okay, this is just what that person has, right? This person may have another huge part of their job, and supervising may be a very small part of it. So that's definitely something that you can't figure out ahead of time, but going into your later career, you can figure out what types of supervision you do or do not like. All right, so now we're going to jump into imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is something I've seen all over the place. I've seen a lot of TikToks about imposter syndrome. I've seen commercials about it, and how people, especially in their first jobs, feel like they aren't good enough. And this video is going to be a really, really helpful explanation about it. It's a TEDx video, but we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about this afterwards. But this is something that I think, especially, I've had a lot of students talk to me about this. Like, yeah, I just don't feel like I'm good enough for this internship. And I'm like, why? And we talk about it. But let's learn a little bit more about imposter syndrome and how we can combat it. You got to start it over.
Even after writing 11 books and winning several prestigious awards, Maya Angelou couldn't escape the nagging doubt that she hadn't really earned her accomplishments. Albert Einstein experienced something similar. He described himself as an involuntary swindler whose work didn't deserve as much attention as it had received. Accomplishments at the level of Angelou's or Einstein's are rare, but their feeling of fraudulence is extremely common. Why can't so many of us shake feelings that we haven't earned our accomplishments, or that our ideas and skills aren't worthy of others' attention? Psychologist Pauline Rose Clance was the first to study this unwarranted sense of insecurity. In her work as a therapist, she noticed many of her undergraduate patients shared a concern. Though they had high grades, they didn't believe they deserved their spots at the university. Some even believed their acceptance had been an admissions error. While Clance knew these fears were unfounded, she could also remember feeling the exact same way in graduate school. She and her patients experienced something that goes by a number of names: imposter phenomenon, imposter experience, and imposter syndrome. Together with colleague Suzanne Imes, Clance first studied imposterism in female college students and faculty. Their work established pervasive feelings of fraudulence in this group. Since that first study, the same thing has been established across gender, race, age, and a huge range of occupations, though it may be more prevalent and disproportionately affect the experiences of underrepresented or disadvantaged groups. To call it a syndrome is to downplay how universal it is. It's not a disease or an abnormality, and it isn't necessarily tied to depression, anxiety, or self-esteem. Where do these feelings of fraudulence come from? People who are highly skilled or accomplished tend to think others are just as skilled. This can spiral into feelings that they don't deserve accolades and opportunities over other people. And as Angelou and Einstein experienced, there's often no threshold of accomplishment that puts these feelings to rest. Feelings of imposterism aren't restricted to highly skilled individuals either. Everyone is susceptible to a phenomenon known as pluralistic ignorance, where we each doubt ourselves privately, but believe we're alone in thinking that way because no one else voices their doubts. Since it's tough to really know how hard our peers work, how difficult they find certain tasks, or how much they doubt themselves, there's no easy way to dismiss feelings that we're less capable than the people around us. Intense feelings of imposterism can prevent people from sharing their great ideas or applying for jobs and programs where they'd excel. At least so far, the most surefire way to combat imposter syndrome is to talk about it. Many people suffering from imposter syndrome are afraid that if they ask about their performance, their fears will be confirmed. And even when they receive positive feedback, it often fails to ease feelings of fraudulence. But on the other hand, hearing that an advisor or mentor has experienced feelings of imposterism can help relieve those feelings. The same goes for peers. Even simply finding out there's a term for these feelings can be an incredible relief. Once you're aware of the phenomenon, you can combat your own imposter syndrome by collecting and revisiting positive feedback. One scientist who kept blaming herself for problems in her lab started to document the causes every time something went wrong. Eventually, she realized most of the problems came from equipment failure and came to recognize her own competence. We may never be able to banish these feelings entirely, but we can have open conversations about academic or professional challenges. With increasing awareness of how common these experiences are, perhaps we can feel freer to be frank about our feelings and build confidence in some simple truths. You have talent, you are capable, and you belong. Everyone can use a little extra kick of confidence sometimes.
All right.
Find out some tips and tricks.
I want to repeat that last sentence to you. You have talent, you are capable, and you belong. Keep that as your mantra anytime you feel that you don't, you're like, what? There's no way I can do this. I know I feel this all the time. So I've kind of done something. I create a smile file, which is this folder in my email where anytime someone sends positive feedback to me, I throw it in that folder. I like burrow it away like a squirrel hiding nuts in the woods, like ready for winter. Because I know when there's certain days when I'm not good at this. Like I just feel so negative. I go into that folder and I find so many emails where supervisors have given me feedback on projects or things that people have given me feedback on that have been positive, or student emails that a student is like, Gabby, yes, like I got the job. Like this is the best thing. Thank you so much for your help. Like those things warm my heart and they help me redefine that I'm good at this. There's a reason I got this job. There's a reason that I'm doing the best that I can. Right. So create some sort of a smile file. Obviously, I don't know about you guys. Sometimes when I have meetings with my supervisor and she'll tell me positive things, I like get so excited and then I like don't remember that. So keeping a physical file where you can write things down or keep track of some positive things can be really, really helpful. I promise you in the long run, especially if you suffer from anxiety or issues, or even if you just have that sense of I'm not good enough. But remember, you have talent, you are capable, and you belong. Keep that as a mantra. All right. So you may have seen some of these pop up on LinkedIn or Instagram, but to really wrap up this entire program, hopefully some of you came to the other programs, but really adulting is this fully faceted, three-dimensional thing. How we're taught to measure success, salary, job title, throw that away. A better measure of success, your mental health, your physical health, liking what you do, having free time, what you spend it doing, salary, job title, right? It's a whole different circle. How to win at adulting, right? Obviously, mastering money and finances, mastering your physical wellness, mastering, mental wellness, and the work-life balance and your diet. And obviously, this all will change when you leave college, and this all will sometimes hit you in the face and be like, how do I handle all of this at once? But hopefully, throughout this workshop and throughout these 3 workshops, you've kind of taken something away and saying, whether it's a mantra or whether it's an app or whether it's just a feeling that you can talk to someone about what's going on. But adulting is real, and adulting is something that we wanted to really help prepare you for. If you know what your next steps are, whether that's a job that you've secured, a graduate school, I don't know, I blanked on that, volunteer opportunity, military opportunity, or whether you're not, you're still searching, please fill out the survey that one of my coworkers will be posting in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what you're up to next. Plus, if you enter the survey, you will enter into a raffle to win a pair of Apple AirPods. Isn't that the best? We all love our AirPods, so we can pretend like we're ignoring people. I love it. But hopefully you guys got a lot out of this workshop, and hopefully you stop by. I know tomorrow we're doing an Ask Us Anything. So if you have questions further about this program, or want to talk about your resume, your cover letter, or if you don't even know, or you start searching for full-time jobs, don't hesitate to reach out to the Career Center. We're here to help you. All right. So this is the OCC QR code for this workshop. This is for Oakland underclassmen only. But we're about ready to transfer over into the panel part of the session. But if anyone has any questions for me, feel free to pop them into the chat. If you want to come off mute when our panelists pop up, we definitely can do that. But all right, thank you guys so much. And our panelists can take it away.
All right, thank you, Gabby. That was awesome. Hey, everyone, my name is Gordon Lauterbach. I'm an alumni of Pitt. I graduated in 2013 from the Swanson School of Engineering. And I'm also part of the Young Alumni Council that Nazarene was talking about at the beginning of the presentation. So tonight we have an awesome panelist. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We have 3 Pitt alum that are going to join us to answer your guys' questions. So I'm going to call you guys out. If you don't mind just sharing your name, where you're hailing from, where you currently work, since that's a hot topic on this discussion, and your graduation year at Pitt. So Will, I'm going to start us off.
Sure. My name is Will. I'm hailing from South Oakland, live across the boulevard. Graduated 2014 with a degree in mechanical engineering, and I work for ExxonMobil as a facilities engineer. And I think I hit them all. So
awesome. Thanks, Will. Naz, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Nazreen Haroon, graduated in 2016 from the business school. I am currently in Friendship, just a few miles away from campus as well. And I currently work as an HR business partner associate at PNC Financial Services.
Awesome. Thank you. And JD.
Hi, I'm JD Schroeder, graduated in 2014 with a degree in mechanical engineering, currently live in the North Hills, and I work for a company called FS Elliott. They make industrial air compressors.
All right, awesome. All right, so if you guys have any questions about industrial air compressors or other things that were talked about throughout today's presentation, feel free to go off mute. If you do go off mute, if you don't mind turning on your camera so we can see you as you're asking your question. You can also post questions onto the chat, and we can answer them as well. But yeah, go for it. Anyone have a question off the bat?
I guess I'll start off. So I also just graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, and I was curious for those in engineering roles as to how your dress codes kind of compare, because I know I co-opted with one company where it was slacks and maybe a polo every day, and then the second company I co-opted with, it was you wore jeans and a collared shirt, but other than that, they didn't really care too much. And
so I can speak for my experience. It's all been with ExxonMobil since graduation. And the way it's kind of set up here, I've had 3 different jobs. One at a lubricant manufacturing plant in Port Allen, Louisiana. One at our headquarters in Houston, Texas, and then the facilities engineering job up here. So in both my plant job and my field job up here, it's pretty much you can wear jeans and a polo, and that's pretty much the as casual as it gets. And then we say business smart for like our headquarter office locations. And kind of what that means is you can't wear jeans and you can't wear polo shirts. So for men, and then I'd say women can get away with a little bit better, or a little bit like more casual sometimes than the men, but it's like every shirt has to have buttons all the way to the bottom, and then slacks. And then there's this thing that they implemented like a year before I left campus called Brand Fridays, where you're allowed to wear branded polo shirts on Fridays. And then there's also this United Way campaign thing where if you donate at a certain level of United Way, you can wear jeans on Fridays. But those both were like additions right before I left campus. They were, but I'll also say ExxonMobil I think is a little bit on the extreme side, because when I first interviewed for ExxonMobil in 2014, the Fairfax campus, which is closed now, had only gotten rid of suits for everyone like every day like a year before. So I say that I think most engineering firms are a little bit more lax at their headquarters than ExxonMobil is.
For FSC, it's kind of, I would say a good rule of thumb is how close are you to getting dirty? And basically, I work as an applications engineer, which is basically in sales. So for the most part, I'm in khakis with a polo. We're allowed to wear branded polos or whatever, but basically a polo. However, if you're, say, a design engineer and you're working with guys on the shop floor a lot, then you'll wear jeans and, steel toe boots and a t-shirt if you have to. So same thing with our service engineers in the field. We may have, FSC polos that they'll wear, but if it's like a hazardous site or something, then we'll have jumpsuits or just jeans for regular sites, et cetera. So it kind of depends on how likely are you to get dirty, and the expectations kind of drop from there.
Nazarene, I know you're more in the corporate world, apart from the engineering world. Do you want to answer that too for all the people that might be going into non-engineering jobs?
Yeah, sure. So I would say definitely, obviously, I think any company, it just depends on what the company culture and vibe is. So there's no perfect answer, but I would say for PNC specifically, it's definitely always business casual. So like dress pants and like nice tops and stuff, depending on what kind of meetings you might have. Like it could go to business professional where you throw on the blazer. So for me, obviously, when we were in person, like my personal locker was also a little bit of a closet so that I could throw on a blazer if I'm added to like a meeting last minute where I need to adapt. But in HR on Fridays, we did casual Fridays. So we were able to do like just nice jeans with a nice top. So that was kind of like the most casual that we would get. But there are other areas of PNC where maybe they're doing more operational work every day or something, and they get to wear jeans all the time. So it really just depends on like what team you are, and what you'll be doing.
Great. Thank you, Nathan, for that question. Who else has a question for the panel? All right, we have one in the chat here. What do you do to make your transition from being a student to working full-time easier?
I can take this. So I would say to have a good network, and just like open communication with people who are kind of in the same boat as you. So my situation was a little unique because I started at PNC in a development program. So I was right away kind of paired with like different people who also just graduated and were also just starting their first job. So I think it was really helpful to just be surrounded by people who were just going through the same thing as myself. So we would all go to our different meetings, not have any idea what was going on. And obviously we learned over time, but it was nice to just have that group of people to be able to bounce off ideas with like more casually and kind of have like your buddy to get you through that transition. So I would say just having kind of your close network of people to be able to go to to just bounce ideas off of, and even just share confusion sometimes. I feel like that's definitely something that helped me with my transition.
Just to bounce off what Naz said, I think being able to commiserate is a really important thing, no matter what stage of your career you're in. There's definitely, I've been at my company now 6.5 years, and there's definitely certain people that when something wonky is going on in the office, or, something bad's happening, or the opposite, something just really funny or great is happening, I've got this, group of 3 or 4 people that all send a message, and, we'll kind of laugh about it or kind of commiserate, just so that we can, offload some stuff. Because I think as a student, obviously you have friends and stuff that a lot of them are doing similar things, but sometimes you're the only person at your job doing something. So you might have to kind of find, especially other people in other departments, to help get you up to speed in terms of what the company's like, but also just to bounce some frustration off.
Awesome. Good ones. All right, a couple more coming in the chat. How about, what was the most jarring thing about going from being a student to working full time? What surprised you the most?
The schedule. I think it took me a long time to get used to waking up early every day and consistently. But then it was also kind of crazy to come home from work and then not have homework, not have different student organization meetings, not having just everything to go to that you do as a student. So I know yesterday they talked a lot about finding hobbies. That's something that I feel like I really needed to do. And now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if I actually ever did find those hobbies, but I think just the schedule and that kind of 8 to 5 routine, that was probably the biggest thing for me. That was an adjustment, and that's a physical adjustment. So
I'll say for me, and probably still going strong, it's the lack of or I shouldn't say the lack of, the transition periods and switch outs are much more longer periods of time. So you might get a new role or a promotion, or switch employers, switch careers, and you'll have a nice clean cut you get every semester in college, where it's all right, well, all that stuff, I never have to think about it again. It's grades in the book, and I move on. And you might have a project or a big thing that comes, and you do get some of those, but usually, at least in my experience, it's more prolonged. So you're measured in years versus 4 month chunks. And on top of that, unless you're really lucky, unfortunately, because if you're looking for jobs in the United States, you're probably going to start with around 2 weeks vacation, maybe if you're lucky 3, if you're really lucky 4. But compared to the amount of break period time you've gotten through most of your life up to this point, it's really it's a really long time between those nice solid 7+ days of not thinking about your career. So that adjustment, I'm still waiting to get to my another 20 years, so I can have 6 weeks vacation and be back to kind of what you have in the school, and the amount of times per year you can have a nice a nice time away from everything. But that was definitely, and still is, the most jarring thing for me.
I would say for me, it's actually, it's kind of a combo answer. And I think the first half sounds more negative than it should, but how much what I had learned in school was not useful in my new job. Basically, I learned very quickly that Pitt had taught me how to problem solve and think and work things out, not so much strict knowledge. And so my first, within a week or two, I was well, 75% of what I spent a lot of my time on studying might not be useful here. But then as I got more into what my company did, I did actually realize there's a lot that I learned at Pitt that was really helpful or really useful. And then also just how quickly you start to pick up new things, especially because at least in a lot of companies, you're not going to get that sit down classroom training. You're not going to sit with 15 other people learning something. It might be one-on-one, or you might be in a group of 2 or 3 people. I was hired with 4 people basically on the same day, and we kind of all went through training together. But just how fast you can learn and kind of different ways to think about things and approach things, especially as you compare them to how you did with schoolwork. It was really, really nice to not have homework, though. I will say that, to come home and you can just do whatever you'd like, whether that's, hang out or, go out and see a movie on a weekday if you wanted to, like all of that kind of stuff. It's really, I think it's jarring for students some students, may start at 8 or 9 in the morning and have night class and it goes all the way till then, but they had little breaks in between. With a normal workday, it might now be compressed, but you've got all that time after work. So it's obviously dependent on the job, but yeah.
And I would even say, JD, I feel like there was a moment where I was like, oh, I get a paycheck. I can actually have money to do things that I want to do. So I feel like that was a nice moment that came to me after graduating.
Yeah, I was lucky. My mom actually, literally, I got off the phone with accepting my job offer, and my mom sat me down and was like, all right, your salary is this, but now you have to pay for this, 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 and this. So it sounds like a lot of money, but just be aware, you're going to have to pay taxes and your rent and student loans and all that kind of stuff. Because especially if you worked, say a minimum wage job like I did during school, to making an engineer salary, it was a significant difference to me. So sometimes it is like an awesome feeling of all of a sudden having money, but just don't take it too far, because you don't want to, start off your career on the wrong foot, at least personally with finances. And
Mom's always bringing you down a little bit. All right, I like this next one a lot. So what are the equivalents of extracurricular activities once you graduate? That's a good one.
So I think this probably depends a little bit on the size and culture of the company. At ExxonMobil, at least the first 2 locations I worked, because there's a lot of employees in Baton Rouge and in Houston, and not so much up here because we have a small 30-person office. But there was literally extracurricular activity, employee organizations that that you could join for various things. So at our campus, we have the organization to employees, which has subcommittees, a social committee, community service committee, the professional development committee, and they literally function like extracurriculars would at a college organization. And there's other employee resource groups too, the Women's International Network or the Black Employee Success Team, things like this. So I think for really large international companies, you at their main locations, you're going to find actual extracurriculars, but then for majority of jobs, you probably won't have things like that, and your extracurriculars are going to come down to the organizations you choose to join outside of work. So for example, for some of us on this panel, we're part of the Young Alumni Council. That's an extracurricular for us. Or maybe you coach softball in your community, and that would be the equivalent of extracurriculars at Pitt or in college.
This session is a good example of an extracurricular, basically. So I mean, for me, I was always I really loved Pitt, and I didn't have money or some of the other things that you can donate back to a university. So I decided, I have some knowledge on some things, maybe I can help out. So I'm an advisor for Panthers Forward for the seniors that are graduating this year. I try to do sessions like this to answer questions, or because I remember what it was like to be a new grad and kind of all of a sudden realizing all the things I don't know. And it's definitely was helpful to have people that answered questions, or I could bounce things off of.
Great. That was a good panel to ask that question to, because all 3 of them were very involved in extracurriculars back at Pitt. So good one. Any other questions? Either put them in the chat, or you guys can come off mute and ask them. I've got one for you guys. So coming out of school where we had much more casual ways to communicate with one another, maybe a lot of text, email, different chats through different apps. What's that like? What's that transition like where how do you decide between sending someone an email possibly picking up the phone and calling them over something, or maybe sending them a text message. I'm talking about at work with your coworkers or maybe your supervisors or even clients.
Yeah, so I can start. So I would say at PNC, we have kind of three main forms of communication. We obviously have meetings and phone calls with one another. We have email, and then we have Skype for Business, which is more of like the casual instant messaging. So I would say it definitely takes some time to understand kind of what format is the most appropriate form of communication, depending on kind of what the topic is. Sometimes I'll be drafting an email, then I look at how long it is, and then that's kind of a first indicator. Okay, maybe this would just be better solved if I picked up the phone and called this person. So honestly, the length of communication is a good indicator of maybe taking it to the next kind of level of formality. And that doesn't mean all phone calls are formal, but just requires an extra step. But I would say definitely like Skype for Business, that's where we have our emojis and things like that. So I think you can be a little bit more casual and also read your audience to kind of see, I always start with proper sentences, and you should always use proper sentences, at least on Skype. I'll see kind of how they respond, and then I know, okay, what level of formality I need to be at. But I always try to match the person. I never want to be less formal than my audience. But yeah, I would say like if it's something that can be answered in like 30 seconds, that could be an instant message. If it requires a little bit more time and thought, put it in an email. And if it's more complex, then I think it's better to just pick up the phone or set up a meeting and talk it through.
I'll definitely say, one, I think it's changed a lot in the last year. My company didn't use Teams at all for like the first 2 years we had it. And then all of a sudden with COVID now, everybody's much more savvy with it. I actually talk more on the phone on Teams than I ever did using a regular phone before. I think especially, at least kind of my generation kind of fell out of, favor of using phones a lot. But especially as a manager now, I'm really trying to emphasize, as Naz said, if something's more complicated, or if it's going to take a long email, or if it's more sensitive, sometimes I know the email I'm going to send is going to make some people mad. So maybe I give them a call just so that they understand, like, I'm not doing this just to make you mad. I just, let's talk it out. What are your concerns, that kind of thing. And that's usually a lot easier over a phone call than email, because email has a lot of assumed emotions, while talking with somebody, you can much better, especially now with video chat, you can see their reactions to things. Sometimes people's faces give away what they're actually thinking. So that can actually be, something that you can use. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, JD, because I mean, I'm sure we've all been in situations where we're even texting someone and then the response comes back a little flat and you're like, okay, what did I do to you? Like, you're kind of wondering what happened there. So I agree, when you can talk to someone in person or just live, it normally goes over better, especially with sensitive topics that could rub someone the wrong way if interpreted incorrectly.
I agree with everything Naz and JD said. One like other maybe piece of this I'll add is if you're in a job where you're going to be interfacing with people who like maybe like are technicians or mechanics, operators. So maybe they're like, they might not have a college degree, or like they don't really ever work from the computer. They're just like have like a cell phone and like that's it. And they're like, kind of boots on the ground type positions. I think it's important to be able to communicate like on their level. So if you might have to speak like you might use certain language and like sentence structure when you're in a meeting with your boss's boss, and need to use a different like different syntax to get your to work effectively with the person with like one of your plant operators. So understanding that audience, and like even when you come in like first day, like if you're trying to be like it should all be professional, but if you're if your syntax is too formal with the wrong person, you either might come back as like someone not down to earth enough to like be like to understand what's going on, or you just might like not be getting to the point fast enough that like they feel like you're wasting your time. So it's important to like understand, that it's not always like finding more, like using more complex syntax doesn't always mean you're being more professional. I guess what I'm trying to say.
That's good. Anybody else have a question either on the chat or over video? I have another one that we all start with a certain amount of vacation days, but oftentimes when you're, the new person at your company or just getting started, you want to show how hardworking you are, and you almost potentially feel guilty for taking them. So maybe speak to that a little bit, and what the proper approach is for taking your vacation days, kind of that work-life balance aspect.
I usually caution people not to take too many up front, just because, like Gordon said, you're trying to make the best impression. Obviously, life happens and things come up that you might need to take time off for. So I think in those situations, if you're new to your job, just be kind of transparent about what's going on and kind of why you need to take the time off. But I would always encourage people to offer, I can make things up at this time later, or even just offering like that you're still willing to help and be available. Not necessarily when you're taking your time off. You should take your time off if you're doing that, but just to offer like another alternative to missing what might be going on, but understanding that life obviously happens. I think get to understand like what the company culture is about taking time off too, and even how your managers like feel about it, and how they even want you to ask them about taking the time off. I think that's the first thing, is you should ask them and just make sure that they're good and understand when you're taking your time off. I know earlier this kind of came to mind, where something that was different about going into the workforce is that you don't have spring break, you don't have holiday break. So you have to use your vacation time to make up some of that. So I think I personally, like for the past few years, have gotten away with just taking the last 2 weeks of December off. But I understand that some companies and some jobs, they might not allow you to take that much time off at once. So I would definitely say just communicate kind of what's going on to get the best idea of what feels acceptable. And I think as long as you're communicating openly and honestly, then hopefully, that still makes a good impression on people. And you can still take your time off.
From Gordon, for me, I'd say this is something that you need to work through in the interviewing and like job accepting process. Like, try to understand maybe not on the first interview, but once you like have a job offer, or maybe like second, third round interviews, like you need to understand what that vacation culture is and make a decision on if it's right for you. And then I'll say and kind of something Naz touched on, I've been involved in some hiring at ExxonMobil, and sometimes people have like, hey, like my family's had this graduation European trip planned for me for 2 years. And it's like, you want me to start this date, and like I need 2 weeks, like almost instantly. So working through, like, if you're going to have some like in the first 3 months, like significant vacation needs, either working that through to see if your start date can be later, or like making sure before you like sign on the dotted line that that's understood, not trying to work that with your supervisor after like in your first week of work. Like if there is some circumstance where that happens, like, because I've seen it both ways, and the people who worked it ahead of time through HR coming in, no problems, and then I've seen it where we've hired someone and then they've like said, oh, I had this thing planned, 4 weeks into my job, and I'm supposed to be at this new hire training, and I wanted to take 3 days off for this. So just if it is going to be needed, because life does happen, make sure that that's communicated prior to signing the dotted line. But don't get yourself in, if vacation is going to be really important to you, don't get yourself in a situation where you go to a culture where like no one takes any of their vacation time, and you didn't figure that out until after you hired in.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're right at our end time here. Thank you very much to our panel. You guys were awesome. Thank you to Pitt Career Services and the Young Alumni Council. Just a few reminders on your way out. Put your Pitt username in the chat if you didn't at the beginning. If you're interested at all in joining or you've been hearing about the Young Alumni Council, please join our info sessions. We have 2 of them coming up soon. And then 2, when you get out, when you move away, possibly move away from Pittsburgh or stay in Pittsburgh, get involved with your local alumni chapter. That's a great way to stay involved and have a good network outside of just your company. So I appreciate you all. Have a good rest of the night and enjoy the weekend coming up. Thank you. Hail to Pitt.